Well, welcome back, everyone. I would like to welcome our next speaker. His name is Dr. Maurice Elias. And Dr. Elias is a professor of psychology at Rutgers University. He's also the director of the social, emotional, and character development lab there as well. You'll also notice he's won numerous awards and has several books. So welcome.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
So would you like to take just a minute and tell our audience what it is that you do and why you're so interested in children's emotions?
Sure. Well, I've been at Rutgers University for 41 years. And during that whole time, I've been very interested in kids, probably because when I first showed up at Rutgers, I showed up with my daughter, Sarah, who was, I think at that time, 4 or 5 months old. So my whole career, I've had kids, now have grandchildren, and have been very interested in them. Quite honestly, through research and practice, because I mean it sounds trite, but we all know they're the future. And if we want to have kids that grow up to be happy, healthy, productive, good citizens, we have to help them. So that's what I try to do through my research, my teaching, my writing, etc.
That's awesome. It's no small task either.
Well, you know what? It's a shared task, and we all pay it forward. So I think it's something that in all walks of life we're all involved with. We're trying to bring up the next generation to be better than us, which given this generation, won't be so hard to do, but we still have to do it. And not to mention the fact that when you know kids well, it's fun. It's just fun to be with them, spend time with them, watch them grow.
Yeah, that's a great point. It's um, a progressive action. It's not something that you can do once and change exactly how your child's going to act.
Well, that's a very important thing actually, because you can't raise your first child like your second child. You can't treat all your kids in the classroom as if they're all the same. You have to be nuanced, and that's not easy stuff. So that's why it's so paradoxical that as a nation we pay people who care for our kids less than others, because their work is incredibly important and incredibly complex.
Yeah, yeah. Speaking of complex, why is it that as parents we want our child to behave and not be emotional, and they're not able to do that? Why is that?
That's because they're children,
Oh
and
yeah.
children's jobs. Yeah, that's it. It's that simple. I often, when I do workshops, I ask people to think about, for the average preschool child and the average middle school child, do you think that they lead with their cognitions, with their thoughts, or with their emotions, with their feelings? And of course, everybody says, oh, their emotions and their feelings. Well, of course they do. And that's because they're children. And it's true in elementary school, it's true in high school, that we lead with our emotions. And our emotion, and a lot of good science behind that now. But it was common sense to anybody that's ever spent time with a preschool kid. So yeah, we want them to behave. But our notion of behave and their notion of behave is something different. They want to express themselves. That's what kids love to do. They love to express themselves. And when they're young, they don't exactly know what time it is. So they don't know that this is not a good time to express yourself. I can't tell you how many Zoom meetings I've been in where preschoolers have decided to come in and join the meeting to their parents' mortification. But everybody, literally everybody on the call, well, I'll preface that. Just about everybody on the call thinks it's lovely. It's wonderful when kids come in and are themselves. And parents are like, oh my God, like when your kid acts up in a restaurant and you say, oh my God, and yet if you look around, the vast majority of people are either not disturbed or are smiling because they've all been there. The ones who are disturbed and who aren't smiling and who are like, my dinner's being ruined, they're the ones that need help, not the parents who can't get their kids to be quiet. So yeah, we have to get used to the fact that now, we do have to teach kids that there are certain times that yes and no, and They'll have to learn that in school. You can't just do whatever you want when you want. But kids love to express their emotions. They love to express their emotions in varying ways, and we have to help them find different ways. Every preschool teacher knows this because you've got centers in your preschool classrooms, and kids go to different centers, and an observant teacher sees that, wow, this kid loves the dress up area, and this kid loves the music section, and this kid loves to paint, and this kid loves the sand table, and kids vary in what they like. But they all like something, and our job is to find out how to help them express their emotions in ways that really help them feel good about themselves.
Yeah. And that's I think a developmental thing too, right? Age wise, as far as what they're able to express and how they express it.
Right. I mean, there are various emotional intelligence or social and emotional learning skills that develop over time. One is your ability to know how you're feeling. Another is the ability to express different feelings, a range of different feelings, not just sad, mad, and glad, but to be able to express frustration as opposed to anger, to be able to differentiate that. But then another thing kids learn is how to control your strong emotions. And I think what most people don't appreciate is that kids through age 5, 6, 7 need to be able to control their emotions when prompted, not to be able to spontaneously control their emotions. And I think this is something that we don't appreciate, that it's just not natural for kids to walk around controlling their emotions. But when they're reminded, when it's explained to them, when it's prompted, when they're prepared, yeah, they can do it. It's just like empathy, right? Kids have a lot of empathy. You're born with empathy. You don't get it from someplace. Everybody has it. But when a classmate hurts themselves, most kids feel badly about that, but they don't go over. They don't go over because they either they don't know that they should go over, or because they're scared. They go over, they could get in trouble, or they'll go over, they won't know what to say, what to do. So those are such critical moments for parents and teachers to help their kids go over. And I'm going to go over with you. I'm not going to send you over. We're going to go over together, and we're going to go over what happens. What do you do when you get to someone who's hurt? You ask, are you okay? And all that kind of stuff. We have to guide kids, prompt kids, cue kids to get them to where they want to go. And that doesn't end because the situations that kids get in get more and more sophisticated, and they still need the adults to be their guides, to be their prompts, to give them feedback and say, well, that was terrific. Maybe next time, maybe what's another way you might try it? And talk about how they might go about it maybe a little differently next time. So, these are things we have to recognize, that emotional development is something that happens not within the kid by themselves, but with the kid in interaction with their peers, their parents, their teachers, coaches, etc.
So with the prompting, I appreciate that, because I think 5, 6, 7 is probably what, first, second grade, somewhere in there. And so I think at that point, parents assume that their kid knows enough to function on their own to a certain level.
Mhm.
And
Yep.
so how could parents prompt without telling kids what to do? Or should they tell them what to do?
Yeah, well, I mean, one of the best things is to use a hierarchy that we call tell, suggest, and ask. And so the first thing is to ask a child an open-ended question. What do you think you might do? Or how do you think you might handle it? Or how do you think you might respond? And some kids can answer that question. Even if they can't answer it, gets them thinking. And then for kids who don't seem to respond to that, you could say, well, suggest is give them choices. Would you like to do this? Or would you like to do that? Or would you like to do that? It's something that many parents are very familiar with if they're good at helping their kids leave places. Would you like to stay for 5 more minutes? Or would you like to stay for 10 more minutes? See, that gives the kids a choice. And that's very valuable for parents because you don't want to ask an open-ended question like, well, how long do you want to stay? And the kid says, oh, let's stay for 2 hours. No, that's not possible. It's like, well, what do you want for breakfast? Well, no, that's not the best question to ask because when the kid says they want pancakes with this and that, you then now either have to say no or do it. So suggesting is really good because it puts reality constraints, gives kids choices, and they don't feel like they're being told. But sometimes we do need to say, I think you should do this. But that shouldn't be our first choice strategy, except in rare instances. So again, ask an open-ended question that helps the kid think about what to do. Second, give them choices that allow them to feel like they're in control to some extent. And third, when it really seems like they need specific direction, or if there's a danger and there may only be one right way, tell them, right? So like for example, going near a hot iron. It's not, well, would you like to go this close to that? No, don't go near the iron. Don't touch the oven. Don't put your hand in that socket. It's not like, oh, would you like to put a finger in the socket or maybe an elbow? No, that doesn't work.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. And that probably gives the child a sense of empowerment because you're allowing them to make those choices and then probably progressively giving them a little bit looser choices as they get older.
Right. Exactly. And then they start to think for themselves. I mean, this is a lot of the work that we do in schools is developing kids' problem solving strategies. Well, you can't be a good problem solver if you're always waiting for solutions to come from somebody else. You have to learn a thought process that's going to help you arrive at an answer or a set of answers. And then later on, contingencies, because the things that you try to do are probably not going to work the first time. So you've got to have plan B, you got to have plan C, got to think about long and short term consequences. See, all these basic skills, the basic set of social and emotional skills we're talking about, they don't change. We're born with them. But what happens is over time, we develop them, we nuance them, and we do that in response to changing situations. And so it's the same set of skills that we have from birth all the way through the end of our lives, but they evolve, they develop, they get differentiated. And again, we help our kids do that by helping them apply the skills to the new situations in their lives.
So you're saying it's not too late if you haven't been doing this all along. It's not too late to start and kind of equip them.
Right. Well, look, honestly, it's never too late. And I always think about adults who say, "Well, it's too late." I ask them, "Have you ever been to therapy?" They say, "Oh, yes, I've been to therapy." Well, why do you go to therapy? To change. Well, if you can change, why can't your kid change? Of course, people can change. People change all the time. People change at all different ages. You just have to create the right circumstances and the right motivation. Remember, someone's not going to change because you want them to change. They're going to change because they understand it's in their benefit to change. So we have to sometimes be a little patient and try to see it from the kid's point of view.
Mm-hmm. So here's a strange question. If you're sending your child to kindergarten, and I'm assuming most teachers are probably employing this type of learning, and they haven't been exposed to it before, how will they react potentially? I know that's individual, but is it something that they'll pick up pretty quickly in that environment?
Right. Yes. I mean, the way teachers do that is by developing routines. And by developing routines that require the kids to listen and that teach them how to listen, that teach them how to cooperate, that teach them orderly sequences of behavior. So that in a good preschool classroom, for example, the process of having a snack involves everybody doing a certain thing in a sequence that's interdependent. Now, we don't tell the kids, oh, here's an interdependent sequence that you're engaging in, the same kind of interdependent sequence that you're going to have to use when you're working for Google or Facebook or TikTok. No, we just put them in that situation and they get it. But the key thing is regularity, repetition, order. I mean, that's how the kids develop these competencies through routine and repetition and evolution. It's not like formal instruction is the best way. It's context-based instruction. For example, when kids go to centers, only a certain number of kids can go in a center at a given time. So they learn, they got to track, and they have to keep track of how many are in there. When can I go in? When is it my turn? And when I'm in there, how long can I stay? I can only stay a certain period of time because someone else has to come in. And then I get to go to a next center. Well, which center do I go to? I have to think about which center do I want? Why do I want it? There's so much that happens in the way routines are structured. And that doesn't change from kindergarten all the way through. So when we make our high schools into places where kids are expected, young, teenagers are expected to just learn and study and not have any interaction, we are not doing them any favors, because throughout their whole lives, they're going to be in interactional contexts, not one-to-one learning situations.
Yeah, that is really amazing. I never thought about centers that way before, because as soon as you said Google and Amazon and moving from point to point, I said, oh, wow, we are training them from preschool up. It never dawned on me,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's quite something. And it could be a longer conversation, but the books we read to them and the way we read books to them is also a underappreciated part of kids' social and emotional development. People think of reading as an academic activity, but reading is actually a social and emotional activity.
So if you were going to read, let's say, something as simple as like a picture book, and you read it to the class, how would be the best way to engage them or to read to them?
Well, of course, if you're going to read to a class, you better have a big book because they got to see it, right?
Right.
But look, when I have a granddaughter who's 11 weeks, I read to her. I read to my 6-year-old grandson. I read to my 11-year-old grandson. But the key in reading is not focusing solely on the text, and that the pictures, especially in a picture book, but even in a book cover, all the illustrations need to be discussed in a way before the text is discussed. Because the illustrations are really where the kids begin to show their insight, where they make their interpretations. Are they noticing the pictures? In The Cat in the Hat, are the kids noticing the facial expressions? Are they noticing the various messaging that's going into the illustrations? I mean, you know this as a book author, how important the illustrations are to the story. But yet, parents and sometimes even teachers want to get the kids doing the text so much that they ignore the pictures. But my advice is, with young kids in particular, is read the pictures first. First, go through the book and see if the kids are looking at the pictures. And if they're not, then we prompt them. We point to the eyebrows. We point to the hands. We point to the facial expressions. We draw the kids' attention to those things because we eventually want them to get in the habit of looking at those things in people, so that they can properly infer how those people might be feeling.
Yeah, I love that. That's fantastic. I think of all the books when I was growing up that I would look at the pictures first because maybe I didn't know how to read the words. And then you get like an image in your mind of what's going to happen and what, the storyline's going to be. And so it'd probably be really fun to get used to doing that and then go back in and actually see what the text really says. So that's a whole other discussion.
Yeah, it is. And there are some wonderful books by Aliki that we used to read to our kids when they were younger, which had no words.
Yeah.
And so they never felt frustrated. They would read the pictures. They would tell the story. They couldn't be wrong. Yeah. And what a wonderful way for kids to fall in love with books when you can't be wrong. So there's a lot that's why reading is such a social, emotional activity for everybody.
That's fantastic. Well, for today, unfortunately, I could go talk about this forever, but we're going to have to break for now. And I'll just bring you back. We'll talk some more about that in a little bit, if that's all right.
Great.
Well, thank you, Dr. Elias. Thank you so much. We'll see you soon.
Yep. Take care.
Bye bye.